Hello everyone, how you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you about yourself, Bruno?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. Cool. So yeah, today is very informal. It is just I'll go through some of the stuff that I would usually go through with people, as well as just kind of having an open format for any questions anyone wants to ask. So obviously we're going to focus on ESS, but yeah, just whatever you guys want to know about, we can cover. So I guess we'll open up the floor for us. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I have no questions initially. No, nothing.
Oh,
Maybe.
sorry, I was just getting some feedback, I think. Never mind. Cool. Was there any questions, Hamza, Jennifer, anything you guys wanted to know? Anything at all, really? If not, I'll just launch into my usual spiel.
So we can ask questions about the survey later on, like questions of what we want to understand in the survey later on when you're done, right?
Yeah, I mean, whenever, if you want to ask now, feel
Yeah,
free.
okay. I'll just wait and collect all the information and ask after you're done.
No problem at all.
Sorry,
Hamza.
I had a question. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
related to the project, but hello?
yeah.
Yep, so it's not related to the project, but I was wondering when the break times are, and is it only 5 minutes per hour, or how does it work?
Breaks depend on the shift that you're working. For example, if you're on a 9 till 4:30 shift, as far as I recall, it would be a 15-minute break at 11 a.m. Then you'd have lunch that you could take anywhere up to an hour between. Usually, I think it's 12 and 2 is kind of the usual times that we suggest taking lunch. Then another break at 3 o'clock. It's usually there's a break every 2 hours-ish of work. So if you're working a 4-hour shift, there'll be a break 2 hours in. There should be a document that we've got that will go through all of the break and lunch times. Let me have a quick look if I can see that. Yeah. Let me grab a link to that. I'll just pop that in the chat. So yeah, that's a list of all of the break and lunches that for whatever shift pattern you'd be working. So 9 to 1, there's a paid break from 11 to 11:15. Or 3 till 8, there'll be a break at 5 till 5:15. But yeah, just depends on the shift that you'd be working.
Sorry,
Earlier to
where
the
is this?
question.
In the chat?
Yes, I just popped it in the chat, but it's on Bob within the company documents folder on the left-hand side. On
Thank you.
all of our documents on Bob, yeah, you just find within the docs and then telephone interviewer resources. Yeah, you can grab them there. Sorry, Jennifer, do you have something as well?
No, I'm fine for now.
No worries. Okay, cool. Right, what I'll do is I'll just launch into my usual kind of chat about ESS, and then if you've got any questions as we go, feel free to just shout out. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, please don't feel like you're being rude or anything. Hi, Aisha. Yeah, just feel free to shout out. There is a raise hand function as well. Feel free to use that. It's whatever you guys feel comfortable with. That's absolutely fine. Before we begin, Aisha, did you have any questions or anything before I just launch into the usual torrent of information on ESS?
No, carry on.
Okay, cool. No worries. Cool. So I'll just go through what we found the most common kind of pitfalls and difficulties are. Obviously, we've got until 6, so yeah, we've got plenty of time today. If you have any questions, do feel free to shout out. That's absolutely fine. Hey, Denise. And yeah, I'll just work my way through. As I said, if anyone has any questions, do feel free to just shout out. That's absolutely fine. Don't feel like you're being rude. You're absolutely not. So I guess we'll start with gatekeepers. Gatekeepers on ESS can always be a bit of a handful. We obviously have a roll of the dice every time we start a call if it's going to be a helpful or an unhelpful gatekeeper. We never really know. So then it just becomes about managing what kind of expectations we should have for that, as well as managing what we can about the call that we're going to make. So obviously we can't control what other people do. We can only control what we do. So then when we start a call with the gatekeeper, we need to make sure that we are on top of our game for making sure our our tone sounds good. We want to be sure in ourselves. We want to sound confident. A lot of the time, people think that everyone kind of who is, smashing target on ESS knows the survey inside and out. I promise you that's not true. It's not necessarily about having the complete confidence in everything that you do. It's about sounding like you have that confidence. And I'll give you guys a bit of information that I say recently, a couple of years ago, kind of realized is that no one really knows what they're doing. Everyone's just kind of doing their best, which is, but yeah, all we can really do. And that's absolutely fine. In every role that everyone does, everyone's just doing their best all the time. It's not about having all of the information, but it's about sounding like you do have all the information. That goes a long way, especially when we're talking about gatekeepers, because that's what they're going to listen out for. If people sound like they are sure in themselves and what they're saying, people are going to be much more inclined to believe that that person does know what they're talking about. And that makes them sound more trustworthy. That makes them sound more relatable, understandable. There's a lot more clarity with what you're saying. So when we approach that sounding like we have a clear understanding of everything we're talking about, that's what people are really listening out for. When we ask to speak to the best person, whether that's a name that we've got on the sample or just a job title, the way in which we ask that, again, is very important. If we try to be overly polite, oh, hello there, can I please speak to Mr. John Smith? Yeah, it is very polite, but it's very passive, and it's not something that will work in our favor, because that tells the gatekeeper straight away we haven't spoken to them before, because we're being very formal and we aren't on a first name basis with them. They wouldn't know why we're calling. It's the first time we're calling. It's a cold call. All of that they could infer from us saying, could I please speak to Mr. John Smith, please? Whereas if we are more direct, more informal with them, oh, hello, I need to speak to John, please, John Smith, then it becomes much more informal. The gatekeeper can infer from that, okay, this person sounds like they are actually a bit more familiar with them, because what we've said is, I need to speak to John Smith. Now, the use of I need there is very useful because it implies urgency. There's importance behind that. When we say, I need this, someone is more likely to go, oh, okay, because we are, by and large, helpful by nature. We want to help where we can. So when you say to someone, I need this, or I want this, I want to speak to John Smith, please, then it allows them to relent more easily. Secondly, when we use their name without a prefix, without that Mr. John Smith, when we just say, can I speak to John, please, John Smith, then it allows us to be a bit more informal. The gatekeeper, again, can infer from that we are familiar with them, that we are on a first name basis with them. We correct ourselves because it's a business, we're calling a place of work, but the implication there is that we are familiar with them. Obviously, we never want to mislead anyone, but when it comes to gatekeepers, we definitely want them to believe the truth that is convenient for us. A lot of what we'll go through today is basically covering psychology. It is marketing and sales techniques, essentially. We're just not going to use them for evil, which is what they often get used for in marketing and sales. So yeah, when we justify that to them unconsciously, we say, I need to speak to John, please, John Smith. It allows them to go, oh, okay, that's probably something that they are familiar with. Something that I say a lot in a lot of these training sessions is none of this is Darren Brown stuff. We can't click our fingers and make someone take part. It'd be lovely if we could. We'd all be very rich. The bonuses would be fantastic. That's not how this works. I talk about psychology. I talk about the subconscious a lot. None of it is stuff that just like convinces people completely right out the gate, because that's not how people work. We are just giving ourselves every chance that we can to succeed. It's about giving ourselves little openings for success as we go, not necessarily about stuff that will just, brainwash people into taking part. That would be probably a bit more unethical. And if I ever do learn how to do that, I guess I'll be out of a job pretty quickly, because I become pretty redundant after that. By the way, I forgot to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Bruno. I'm the training manager here at IFF. Sorry, I just realized I hadn't actually said that. It's my job to upskill people and make sure everyone has the skills that they need. That's my whole thing. Hello. So yeah, we use direct language a lot. We can use that once we get through to the best person as well. When we ask someone to take part, again, it can feel very polite to ask, could I ask you some questions? Would it be all right if I went through some questions with you? Which is very polite. But again, it's not as direct as we can be. If we say, I need to ask you some questions, I want to ask you some questions, it's again just layering in this extra bit of persuasion that goes underneath what we're saying, which allows people to feel a bit more like, ooh, yeah, okay, well, maybe I can. Whenever we can use these little bits of direct language, it will always go a long way. Similarly, little language choices, like when we justify why someone should take part. Thanks for taking my call, John. So the reason I'm calling is that the Department for Education, Skills England, Scottish Government, whoever we're calling on behalf of, has selected your site to answer some questions about staffing, training, and recruitment, because it's really important that we get this feedback from a wide array of UK businesses. So I need to run through those questions with you just now, if that's okay, John. We use, again, subtle language choices. We use because statements. That's something that we do when we're talking normally, because that's how we talk. We use because statements to justify things. But when we use it actively, when we use that as part of a justification, people, again, are more likely to think, ooh, this is something that's worth doing. It's a subconscious thing. We like when people use a because statement as a justification for doing anything. You might have noticed this in an airport. That's when I noticed it most often. When I'm waiting in the security line, someone at the back of the line goes, I'm so sorry, everybody. Would it be all right if we skip the queue because our flight's about to leave? And you go, yeah, fair enough. Bad planning on your part, but on you go. Works the same way if they didn't say that. If they said, I'm so sorry, everybody. Would it be all right if we skip the queue because we're in a rush? Our brain fills in the blanks there and goes, we're in a security line at an airport, they're in a rush, their flight's probably about to leave. Fair enough, on you go. It is a simple thing that we do automatically as we talk. That's just common parlance for us. We justify things using a because statement. But when we use that actively as part of our introduction, again, it just helps push that towards where we want people to be, which is agreeing to do the survey. The introduction that we actually use, obviously, I'm sure your TLs have sent you many introductions. You've probably heard quite a few. There is no one correct introduction. I'll say that at the top. There's not one that works for everybody. We've definitely got some that work, well for more people. However, everyone delivers introductions differently. Some of our highest performers use a much more direct approach with their tone, and the way that they deliver that doesn't always work for people because it's very awkward to do if you're not used to speaking in that manner. But it works for them. Similarly, some people have a much more laid back approach. That works for them, doesn't work for everyone. So the way which we deliver an intro is personal to everybody. The key things are sounding confident and sure in what you're saying. The words are less important than how you sound. Obviously, we need to cover our golden rules. We need to make sure we're mentioning our name, the employer skills survey, the client that we're calling on behalf of, an IFF. But we can wrap that all up by launching in with, hi, John. My name's Bruno Davison. I'm just calling from IFF on behalf of the Department for Education and Skills England. We're just calling concerning what's called the Employer Skills Survey. Now, John, I just need to ask you a few basic questions about staff training in the business. Is that something that you could help us with, John? Doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It doesn't have to be a massive spiel that we go into. Short and snappy is usually what I would recommend. The other thing that you might have noticed there is just using people's names, which is, again, a very useful tool that we can use. Goes a long way. It feels a bit awkward to do because it's not how we're used to talking to people, but I promise you it's worth doing. It's something that, obviously, when we're talking to our friends, our family, our loved ones, we don't use their names constantly because A, we sound mad, and B, we're looking at them, we're making eye contact with them, we're gesturing with our hands, they can see us, the facial expressions that we're making, they understand that we're talking to them. Over the phone, we don't get that advantage. So using people's names is essentially as close to eye contact as we can manage. Now, there is a line that becomes very uncomfortable very fast. as Denise can tell you, Denise, if I keep Denise using your name, Denise, it stops being it stops being your name, doesn't it, Denise? It just starts being a noise I'm making, Denise. It gets really uncomfortable, Denise, very quickly. Sorry. But that is something that feels very forced if you make it obvious, and people will be able to tell. If you just constantly use someone's name in an introduction, it feels really uncomfortable. It feels very forced. It's an obvious sales technique. But if we do it every now and again, we just throw it in almost like punctuation, then it becomes actually useful for us. Now, the reason it works is, again, based in psychology and evolutionary science. When we go back far enough, when we invented the idea of names and it was noises, we were all living in little tribes and caves, we denoted people with names so that we could tell people apart and so that they knew that we were talking to them. We trusted the people who used our names because they would be in our little tribe. Now, we've evolved over tens of thousands, millions of years, but some parts of our brain haven't needed to, and that is one of our bits of caveman brain. We like when people use our name. It makes us more trusting of people. We like them more. Every study that's been done shows that people who use our name every now and again are seen as more trustworthy, more likable, and more relatable. Now, again, there's a line. If we overdo it, it has the opposite effect. It becomes very kind of creepy and salesy. We don't want to do that. I usually recommend 2 to 3 times in an introduction. That's where I think it sits at the comfortable level. It doesn't become creepy. It doesn't become forced. That's easy-ish to do. Obviously, again, when we're not used to doing it, it can feel a bit weird, but the call connects. They say, hello, John speaking. We go, hi, John. John, the reason we're calling is just concerning what's called the Employer Skills Survey. My name is Bruno Davison. I'm just calling on behalf of the Department for Education from and Skills England from IFF. I just need to ask you a few basic questions about staff training in the business. Is that something you can help us with, John? So there, it's 3 times. Doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel constant. It's just scattered throughout. And it will make people feel a bit more unconsciously like you are trustworthy. Now, again, this is something that we are using because we are getting government feedback. We're not trying to scam people out of their pension. It's something that is worth using for us because, you know, we're just trying to get this feedback so the government can implement this support and help for people. Which I know some people can feel a bit weird about using, you know, tricks like that, but we're not using it for evil. At the end of the day, this is something that we are doing to get feedback so the government can implement better help. All of these things do work. They will feel a bit awkward at first because it's not how we're used to speaking. Again, we're used to just looking at people, but when you get into the swing of it, I promise it will have a very positive effect. Obviously, if there's no name on the sample, just make that the first thing that you ask. Oh, yeah, I'll transfer you to our marketing manager. No worries. Thank you very much. Hello? Oh, hi there. Is that the marketing manager? Yes. Brilliant. Sorry, what was your name? Just so I know who to what to address you by, so I don't need to call you sir or madam. You know, it just use it as a disarming start to a call. And then once you've got their name, use it. If you don't catch their name, if they, you know, mumble, if there's some distortion, just ask them to repeat it. So you didn't quite catch it. It's all absolutely fine. That is always worth doing. And then you can go from there. Using people's names, yeah, is one of those little things that goes a long way. I've told this anecdote a lot, but it's true, and that's why I keep repeating it. So I had a wedding to go to last year, and I love an excuse to buy a new suit. Any excuse I can find, I'll take it. Fine. So I picked out the suit that I wanted on the tailor's website. I went to the tailor. Salesperson opened the door for me and said, hi there, my name's Henry, what's your name? And I said, I'm Bruno. And then I walked out about an hour and a half later with 2 new suits and several shirts I did not need and a watch that I don't wear and several pairs of shoes, which was extravagant even for me. So yeah, then I was walking home thinking this was a bit much and thinking back to the conversation that I'd had with the salesperson. And every time I tried on a jacket or a you know, a waistcoat, a tie, anything, he'd handed me something else and said, Bruno, that looks really good. Why don't you try it with this? Bruno, that's the look. That's what we need to go for. Every time was affirmations and, you know, compliments and using my name. And I would have been mad, but it was a great sales technique. It is the same concept. it is the same thing. When we use people's names, we get a better kind of rapport built with people. So that is always worth doing, because it works even when we are aware of it. I am doing this every day. I am teaching this concept all of the time. It works on me just as much as it works on anyone else. You know, it's the same. I often hear people say, "Oh, I don't like when people use my name." It's fine. You don't have to. It's your subconscious that's actually, you know, responding to it and saying, this person is more trustworthy. You should be more trusting of them. So that is always, again, just one of those things that is worth keeping in mind when you're doing an introduction. Just scatter in their name every now and again. It doesn't have to be constant. Just every now and again works a charm. I think one of the most common things that people worry about is that when we're doing a survey like ESS, which is one of the longer ones, that people will ask, well, how long is it going to take? Because they will, and fair enough. That's a valid question. And then we say 20 minutes, and people will very often say, well, I don't have 20 minutes. I'm at work. That's insane, which is, again, a fair response. Now, that is something that we often do come across, but because of that, we also know how to combat that. And it is what's called expectation anchoring. So we've said 20 minutes, and they have said, no, I don't have 20 minutes. I'm at work. What are you talking about? Expectation anchoring is a very simple concept. We've given them one end that is at one extreme, and then we give them the other end. So they say they don't have 20 minutes. All right, how about just 2 minutes? We'll make a start. We'll see how far we get. And if you need to leave, that's absolutely fine. So simple concepts. We have to be very clear. We are not telling them that we will get it done in 2 minutes, because that would just be a lie. ESS is not a quick survey by any means. The fastest I've seen it done is about 6 minutes with a very skeleton crew company. And they said no to basically everything. But, you know, if we use this as a tool, again, it gets people on the phone. And that is, as you are all well aware, one of the biggest hurdles. So getting them to just start the call, that's where we want to get to. By giving them that other end of the anchor line, 2 minutes, we just make a start. We'll see how we get on. And look, if you need to leave, that's all right. We can call back and finish it another time. We're giving them a couple of quick bits of useful psychology in a row. So firstly, we're giving them the freedom to opt out. They can disappear if they want. They can abandon it. That's all right. People like when they are given a choice. We like having choice. We don't like when we are forced into something, as I'm sure you all remember from when your parents tried to make you clean your room when you were a child. You didn't want to because you had to, and that didn't feel fair. Now we clean a room, I hope, because we want to live in a clean space. We don't have to. We have the choice not to, but we do because we want to live somewhere nice and clean. Same concept. People just don't like being forced into things or feeling like they are being forced into things. So when they are given the option to, look, if you need to step away, that's all right. Perfectly fine. They feel more comfortable with that. Secondly, expectation anchoring uses a very simple concept, which goes, when we see two numbers, one of which we don't really like and one of which is much better, that one is seen as a much more appealing number. So you will have come across this before in one format or another. So most common ones that I usually think of are charity clipboard people on the high street who will come up and say, could you spare £5 a month to help save the dolphins? And you say, no, sorry, I don't have any spare dolphin money. And then they say, oh, how about just £1 a week? Even that would be so helpful, which is A, £1 less. So not actually that much less. And B, still optional. We don't have to give any money to a charity. Now, ethically, morally, maybe we should, but our brain will bypass that. Matt, I love the background. Excellent. At the pub, good call. We don't have to do anything, but our brain will suggest that as a good idea. Now, the second thing that you will have seen this in a million times before is every sale ever. Every sale you have seen was $79.99, now $49.99. That is the same thing. It's a sales technique. A lot of this is. Our brain sees that and goes, ooh, good deal. Despite the fact that we often don't need it, but our brain goes, yeah, but look how cheap it is. I don't need an under-desk bubbly foot bath, but for £20, who could say no? And that's, again, what we're using here is our brain's inability to distinguish between good idea and cheap, or in our case, less time. So when we deliver that, you have 20 minutes. That's all right. Look, how about just 2 minutes? We'll just make a start. We'll see how we get on. If you need to leave, that's no problem at all. We can call back and finish it off another time. We are leaning into our brain's ability to go, yeah, that's a better number. 2 is less than 20. Better number. Again, skipping over the fact that they don't really need to help at all. Be lovely if they did, but they don't have to. It's not a mandatory thing. So we should always, when someone says, oh, I don't have 20 minutes, that's all right. Push to get them started on the call. That is often the main hurdle, because once they actually get onto the call, then it just becomes about keeping them there. If they say, look, I'm, the only person working today. If a customer comes in, I have to go and serve them, which is one of the common ones. That's all right. Look, what I can do is I can just wait while you go serve them, and then you can come back. That's no problem at all. You're finding a compromise. I'm waiting on a call today. We've got a meeting later on. I don't know when they're going to call. It's all right. Look, if that call comes through, I can just hang up and call back 15 minutes later. That's no problem at all. You can set a definite appointment. It'll come back to you in 15 minutes. It's always just about compromising and finding those solutions wherever we can, because there is almost always a compromise we can make, or something that we can twist to figure out, okay, what can we get them on the phone, get them started at least. Because once they're on the phone, yes, people will abandon it. Of course, partials are part and parcel with what we do. It's going to happen. It's not fun when it does. There's going to be some times where people abandon the call, but getting them started on it is a bigger hurdle to cross than keeping them on the phone. Because when they're started on the call, then we can rely on, again, people's innate desire to have something finished. We don't like leaving things unfinished. It is an itch in the back of our brain that we can't scratch until it's done. So again, that just becomes about reassuring people. Brilliant, that's us past the halfway mark now. Look, we're in the home stretch, not much longer. I know how valuable your time is. I won't keep you much longer. Thanking them between questions. John, thank you for that. Let's move on. I'll be as speedy as I can. Just keeping them engaged throughout the survey, again, keeps their brain focused on what you're asking them and doesn't allow them space to wander off and think what else they could be doing with their time. So when we have them on the phone, it just becomes about keeping them engaged. When you move between questions, thanks for that, John. Okay, moving on to this next one. Or, brilliant. Okay, John, now we're in the last section here, or we're into the middle section. I promise I won't keep you much longer. Once we can get them on the phone, that is the big hurdle. So expectation anchoring goes a long way to getting them in. Now, I mentioned partials there. Partials are, again, a big stumbling block that we have to face on pretty much every project that we run, except the mandatory ones, I suppose. And even then, I'm guessing there'll be some partials because people have to leave every now and again. People will need to go because they have life happening. They're at work, or their bath finished running, or their dog's barking, who knows. We all have stuff happening in the background. That's how life works. People will need to go every now and again, and sometimes there's nothing that we can do to keep them there. However, we can boost up our chances of success by doing a couple of things. So firstly, you can absolutely suggest a time to people. If you know you're working on Thursday and you want to try and keep that definite appointment, say, okay, how about I call back on Thursday at 2:00? Absolutely fine. You can, always suggest a time to them. Now, if they say, no, sorry, I can only do Friday this week, and you're not in on Friday, it's bad luck of the draw. We have to call back when suits them, obviously. But we can always suggest that to them. Secondly, when we're getting an appointment booked in, obviously we make a note of that. But if we want to boost up the chances that they will actually follow through, ask them to make a note of it as well. So this is, again, very simple psychology that is used often by dentists and doctors most commonly. When people need to reduce the rate of no-shows, because no-shows cost dentists and doctors money, they stop handing out filled out appointment cards. They will hand you a pen and a blank appointment card. Say, cool, if you just want to fill that out, your appointment's on the 6th at 2 p.m. And then you fill that out. And then you are more likely to go back to that appointment. Works the same way for us. Have you got a pen and paper? Okay, brilliant. If you just want to make a note, my name's Bruno Davison. It might not be me who calls back. It might be one of my colleagues. We're going to call back on Thursday at 2 p.m. and we're going to finish off ESS. That's the Employer Skills Survey. It's as simple as that. The act of writing something down, an agreement, our brain goes, ooh, you've signed a contract. Because again, we've evolved lots, so we're still very simple monkeys in a lot of the things that we do. So when we can get them to write that down, make an agreement, that boosts up our chances to keep them holding themselves accountable. You can use this in your own life. If you've got flaky friends who always bail on stuff, ask them to write down what you're doing. It's the same concept. It works. Not that I'm saying that you should all manipulate your friends using psychology. Don't do that. I mean, I'm not the police, do what you like, but still. Yeah, there's a lot of these little things that we can do to just boost up our chances. We want that retention rate for people who agree to actually come back. I'll cover a couple more quick points and then I'll open up to questions again. One of the things that, again, commonly trips people up is when we get through to a best person and they say, oh, look, can you just send me this in an email? I think I need to read over all of this, which is, again, a fair request. Now, we can, of course, and should send reassurance emails to people. It is very quick. It comes through pretty much immediately. There isn't a delay on it. It should be literally a second or two after we click send. It should be in their inbox. If it's not, tell them to check their junk folder. That's usually where it goes. Now, if we send that and then just call it a day, oh yeah, okay, cool. I'll call back another time after you've had a read of that. That doesn't really move the sample on because most often they're going to go, cool, bye, and then never read it again. If instead we use it as a tool rather than a crutch and say, brilliant, yeah, I'll send that over just now. If you just want to have a quick read over that, and then once you're feeling comfortable with everything, we'll just make a start. How does that sound? Again, then we are pushing people towards getting started on the survey whilst, acquiescing to what they've asked for, which is a copy of the reassurance email. It just stops being something that we can then, use as the end of a call and instead use as a segue to go from negotiation into survey. So use that as a jumping off point. So yeah, absolutely. I'll send that over just now. If you want to have a quick read, and then once you're happy with that, we can make a start on it. How does that sound? Again, you're asking them for consent. You're asking them to take part, but it then just becomes about kind of aiming towards the survey as opposed to just hoping people read it and then remember the next time we call, which they won't, because of course not. Why would they? It's, something that they will leave in the recycling bin or the junk folder and then never look at, because that's fair enough. That's just, a bit of junk. So instead, use that as a tool to try and get people started on the call. Another one that we come across very often is you need to speak to head office. You need to deal with head office for that, which is, again, difficult because it's a valid request. It's something that I don't think is ever, born out of malice. No one's just trying to fob us off for the sake of it. They are usually worried that they'll say something that will get them in trouble because they don't want to give us information. Denise, or they need to check if they can talk about that. Yeah, absolutely. They're worried that they're going to get something wrong, basically, which isn't really something that they can get wrong. This isn't something that, it's not a compliance check. We're not following up and making sure that everyone said the right answers. And secondly, I think, it just becomes about reassuring them. So firstly, all of this is anonymous. I think the other thing that people worry about is that when we publish the results of this sort of thing, we will say, we spoke to Steve from Bob's Fish and Chips, and he said that Bob, the owner, was an authoritarian who never let them, steal any of the chips or have any breaks. I think that's what people are afraid of, is that we're going to name people, which obviously we never will do. It's always aggregated data. So the report that gets published will read something along the lines of 10% of businesses that we spoke to in the greater Manchester area agreed with the following statement. We struggle to find the correct training for 50% of our staff, etc., etc. You know, it's always just the raw data. It's never anything identifiable. So I think using that as justification goes a long way. I appreciate, you don't want to pass on anything that you're worried about getting wrong. Don't worry, it's all very basic, simple questions. It's yes, no type things. None of it ever gets, none of it's ever identifiable. And also, use things like the postcode that's on the sample. Use that to kind of argue your case. We need to speak to the site at EH11EJ. We can't speak to head office because they won't have that same knowledge as John or the manager, the head of HR, the training manager, the owner. That's why we need to speak to someone here, because we need the information that they have from dealing with the staff day in, day out. They will have really much more intimate knowledge of who is proficient, who is, in need of more training. Head office might get a weekly roundup email from the management, but they won't have the same hands-on experience that the manager or the owner will. That's why we need to speak to someone at this site. And again, using that postcode to kind of drop in the idea that you are familiar with this site can go a long way into just keeping people feeling like we are actually, more focused on that, as opposed to just what they assume, which is we're just looking for some, anyone to answer questions about training. So yeah, I think it is something that is just worth reassuring people that we're not asking for any sensitive information. We are asking basic, simple questions, yes, no, or multiple choice about, if training is needed. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just getting feedback for the Department for Education or for the Scottish Government or whoever we're calling on behalf of, to make sure that they can offer the correct support in the future, and to make sure that any legislation passed can be effective for companies like yours. Cool. I think that's my kind of main spiel out of the way, which took 40 minutes. So I will open up to questions. Anything that you guys want to know, and yeah, don't feel like there is any stupid questions. There is no such thing as far as I'm concerned. Anything at all, please do feel free to ask. You can use the chat, you can unmute yourself and shout out, use the raise hand function, however you want to do it. So yeah, how can I help, guys? Jennifer, yes.
So I wanted to ask, because sometimes if the person is not available, the best person, they would tell us, yeah, I can give you his number or his email. Can we take a number and call that person? Is that possible, to call another person with their number?
Yeah, absolutely. So as long as we are staying within that site, absolutely fine. So we can take a referral to someone else as long as they are, working at that site. But yes, there's a function at S1 when the call connects that will ask, I think it's referred to new contact, and that will allow you to input a new number. If you do take any numbers, just one thing I would say, always make a note of the previous number. So just copy and paste it from up at the top where it says the number. Just copy that, paste it into the notes, and just make a note saying old number this, new number this.
Okay.
Just so, because obviously once you update it using the actual Unicom code, when it'll ask you to put in the number, press next. Once you do that, that will update the sample. We always want to make a note of the old sample number, just in case that number doesn't work. In case that person's out of office for an extended period of time, we just can't get through to them. There was they gave us the wrong number, they gave us the wrong number on purpose. Any of that means that the sample would then be unusable because we didn't have any other contacts. So always make a note. If you're updating any sample, just make a note of the previous number as well. Matt, you had a question.
Hey Bruno, sorry if it's a bit noisy. I forgot my headphones. Just a quick one. So basically, if I call a site and they say, hey, I know you want to speak to someone who does training, but it really is dealt with by our head office or our manager who's located somewhere else. If we're getting a lot of pushback in that sort of situation, can we still just try and do a survey, albeit there won't be much about training? I'm just asking this because I actually haven't done any shifts yet. I've had a briefing, but I haven't done any shifts. I'm starting next week. How do you deal with that sort of situation?
It's a very valid question. So with, they are unavailable, they are out of office, they are at head office. Yeah, like I said, we can take referrals, and we've got a pretty wide scope for who we can speak to on ESS. So if people are unavailable, if they are working out of head office, whatever, either just try and find someone else at the site, because it obviously depends on the size of the company. If it's something that we are calling a big business, there's going to be a lot of people that we could speak to, because that's probably going to be most people kind of upper management in HR, anyone who's involved in staff training, management in general should have a fair idea. Owners, CEOs, all that sort of kind of general area should have a pretty good idea. Now, with smaller businesses, obviously it's a bit more difficult because there's less people physically to answer questions. However, that doesn't necessarily mean there's only going to be one person. There's likely still going to be a couple. But yeah, in general, we can take referrals to other people. That's absolutely fine, as long as they are talking about that site. So we can't take a referral to head office, but if someone is only in a couple of days a week, that's fine. We can still speak to them as long as they are talking about this site specifically. But I think, yeah, in general, it's all right for us to search for alternative people, because that's just, again,
even if they're at another site, we can still be transferred to them as long as they're speaking about the site we're calling for. Yeah.
So we can't take head office referrals. We could, for example, an area manager who oversees several sites might be okay. Well, that would be okay, but we want to avoid that wherever we can. So realistically, it should always be someone who's working at the site that we're calling. The only real exception would be someone like an area manager who deals with multiple sites, but they would have to just talk about the site that we're calling. Other than that, keep it in sight. Because I think we do have permission to complete the survey with more than one person. So you might speak to one person who knows about recruitment but doesn't have any responsibility for training. But we don't want to make appointments to jump around, because that'll just leave the survey kind of in limbo. Then we need to chase down the original respondent again. We don't want to be transferred to a second respondent that's in a different section of the site. So it would have to be two people who were available at the same time.
Just try and push maybe for someone who can do it at that site. Yeah, even if it might not be 100% the answers. Also, I can just try and say, if you have some idea of training.
Yeah, look, I mean,
someone on the ground. Yeah,
there will be, people who aren't 100% on everything. That's fair enough. There's always going to be, those people who have gaps in their knowledge. If someone is saying, I don't know to every question, they're not the right person. But if someone, deals with training and a bit of staffing and there's no one else because that's only dealt with HR, head office, then they're the best person to speak to, even if they've got a couple of gaps here and there. But I think it's a good rule of thumb is just just be aware of what they're saying. If they are saying, I have no idea about this on every other question, then maybe we do need to find someone else. And, sometimes all that takes is just checking with them. Would there be anyone else who would be able to answer these questions? And if they say, no, it's literally just me, then that's what we've got to do. But I think then it becomes about that clear line of, am I speaking to the right person or not? Am I at least making an effort to check this is the right person? Denise, I saw you put your hand up before and then it went down again. Did you have a question?
Oh, yes, thanks, Bruno. It's just I've had an example where the sample put me through to head office, but the address was for a local site. So I was speaking to the person. He was actually really keen to do the survey, but he didn't actually have any information about the local site. So I took his the number for the new site, but I didn't realize I could call them back. So I'm just thinking, if that happens again, if someone gives me an alternative number, how do I call back? Actually, do I go through the options? Is there when it says take a new number, will it then dial the new number for me, or do I how does that work?
Let me try and boot this up. Let's see if I can get this working. There's been some issues with trying to share my screen on this recently, so let's give it a go and hope for the best. So, can you guys see this? Yes, no, anyone? Yep, thumbs up. Lovely, yep. Cool. Okay, so when we start a call on ESS, one of the first, on the first page, you will get transferred to respondent, personal phone is correct respondent. That'll take you just to the next page. If you click on referred to someone else's site, that will ask if they've got a different phone number, same phone number, and they're available now, or same phone number, not available now. If you click different phone number, then it will ask for the person's name that we're speaking to and the new phone number. So we would just enter their name and their new phone number. So this is where I was talking about before. We want to make a note of their previous phone number. So easiest way to do that, just click into phone number at the top, press Control and C, or if you're on a Mac, Command and C. Press edit on your comments box, put a quick note in saying previous number and just hit OK. And then that will save that up at the top. And then when we press next here, you'll see it says interviewer, use the options on left-hand menu to arrange a callback. So then you just set an appointment for whatever, 15 minutes from then, because that will probably be the next available slot. So obviously now the next available slot is 6 p.m. because that's the next time, because you call in 15-minute increments. You set an appointment, you make a note saying NDC, spoke to gatekeeper Jeff, who said best person, Jane, in a meeting, new number, updated, previous number, this, call back now. And then you set that by pressing submit, and then that will then come up in your sample queue in however long it takes to get to the next quarter mark on the hour. But yeah, that's how we would update a number.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if the sample came back to me. I thought it just went into a pool. No,
it should. So you've always got priority for sample that you set, whether it's a soft appointment or a hard appointment. It should roll back to you if you're working. Obviously, if you set a definite appointment, that will 100% come back to you. Soft appointments can kind of go a bit more either way, but if you set it, there's still a priority as far as I understand it. Basically, yeah, it just will. If you've got enough, so let's say you set a soft appointment for 3 o'clock, but you have a definite appointment set for 3 o'clock as well. The definite appointment will come up for you. The soft appointment would go to someone else because it will take priority. But yeah, in general, there should be, if there's nothing else, it should roll back to you anyway.
Thank you.
Jennifer Rose, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because today was my first shift and I spoke to someone. She said there is no best person available on their site. The only person that can do it is at head office. So I said, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go through to head office, but we would like to see someone specifically on site. And she said there's just no one available to be able to do that on the site. It's just head office.
So, look, that is again one of those things that we will come across from time to time. Couple of ways that we can approach it. We can try and argue our case and explain that I appreciate what you're saying. However, the only people that we can speak to would be based at the site. Now, don't worry, we're not asking for any sensitive information. We're not asking for anything that would be identifiable. It is very simple, basic yes/no questions to try and put their mind at ease. Or alternatively, if they are just stonewalling us and they are just constantly saying you have to speak to someone at head office, I would say the better option at that point becomes put in an appointment for a couple of weeks down the line and just hope we get a better gatekeeper. Because sometimes, there is just no winning with the gatekeepers that we speak to. They are just going to absolutely stonewall us, and they're very good at their job. it's our job to try and bypass them. It's their job to make sure we don't. That's the back and forth we have. So yeah, there is going to be some cases where they will just absolutely brick wall, and there's nothing we can do. The advantage of having ESS running for quite a while, it is a longer survey. We're running until probably about Christmas time, means that we do have that ability to set appointments and kick the can down the road a bit. If we are getting a gatekeeper that is, terminally unhelpful for us. Now, obviously, there is limits to that. We use RPS sampling, so we can only call sample a set number of times, depending on what type of sample it is. And that means that we don't want to waste any of the sample. But, in situations like that, I would say that can be the best option, is to just try and get a better gatekeeper the next time. Matt, sorry, you had another question.
Thanks, Bruno. What's the current strike rates, and are we behind on the project, or are we kind of going well? Just to have an idea of how much pressure we're under.
I don't think we're behind. I think it's going pretty well. I don't know the overall strike rate. Let me have a quick look. Jennifer Rose, yes, you had another question.
Yeah, I have two separate questions, but it's not concerning surveys currently. I just want to understand, do we have to do anything concerning our timesheets? Because after shift, it does pull up like a bunch of information about
that just tells you what you've worked. So you can just
we don't have to submit anything
No.
like that. Right.
No,
okay,
no.
great. Just checking.
No, don't worry.
Oh, also, just one final one. I wanted to confirm for like taxes and all that. Would they be handled by IFF, or do we have to handle that ourselves? Because sometimes if like you're doing this, you might have to handle it yourself. It does depend.
So you should get your tax should come off automatically. It's
okay.
PAYE,
Right.
so it's earned. So yeah, you should see in your first pay slip, you'll get you've probably got an invite to I always forget what it's called. Is it? Let me have a quick look. It is My ePay window, I think, is the one that we use. You should see a breakdown of your earnings. So it will say, if you've got any student loans that are coming off, that will be noted there. Tax, pension, anything like that would be included in that pay slip. So if there is nothing there except your pay, flag that. But it should just be PAYE, so it should just be taxed as it comes out.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, sorry, just to go back to your question, I think the overall strike rate currently is sitting about 0.55 for the whole project. If we're looking a bit more recently, no, I think it's 0.55 is where it's sitting at roughly. I haven't been keeping tabs on where we are for completes, but I think we're sitting kind of roughly where we want to be.
Thanks. I just didn't realize how long the project was. It's like going until like December or something crazy.
Yeah, I think with it all ESS cohorts, we usually run for about 6 months. So I think roughly Christmas is the current estimate. Obviously, that may change as we go, but that's currently where we're sitting at.
Okay, that I never remember. Anyway, sounds good to me.
Sorry, Matt, you disappeared for a second.
It's brilliant. If it's a big project, that's brilliant news.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. Hamza, you had a question.
Yep, so in regards to before every shift, would there be a Teams briefing, or is that just on our first shift?
No, so a briefing is something that you would have at the start of any new project that you're working on. So you will have a team meeting that your team leader will just have in the morning that covers any changes to the project, anything you need to watch out for, what they expect for the day, any good tips that they picked up of late. But yeah, briefing, you only get the first shift that you're working on a project. So if you switch to a new project, you get briefed on that before you went live on that. So yeah, it just becomes something that is done at the start of. Every project that we run, obviously we will do a briefing for, and then we will kind of build that out as we go, and then you would get briefed on that as needed. So if you're working on that, then you would be briefed on it, but it's not something that you'll get constantly.
Okay, perfect. And so before every project, there will be a Teams meeting just in case there's any changes? So we don't
Yeah,
start dialing straight away.
every shift, your team leader will start with a team meeting just in the morning, or if you're working in the afternoon. Usually 5-10 minutes. It's not an extensive thing. It's just to cover any project changes, anything that project control have asked that we update. Just a quick kind of hello, how is everyone? Here's what we're expecting for the day, that sort of thing.
And these links will be sent on WebEx.
Yeah, so that's just within WebEx. They'll just start a call within the team. So you'll just get a little pop-up that says join. They'll give you a nudge if you don't join.
Perfect, thank you.
No worries. Ali, you had a question.
Hello, Bruno. Yes, sorry I joined late, so I couldn't join
That's
early.
all right.
Thank you. What I found with the ESS a lot of the time, because of the if I put it this way, the unpredictable length of the survey, I was getting a lot of partials. So I'm not sure whether to tell them the length of time before I start the survey off. That's what I'm confused on, you know.
So it's not something that we need to offer apropos of nothing. If they don't ask, I usually would say don't mention it. If it's something that they ask, then we have to tell them. We have to give them an accurate representation, which is about 20 minutes. Obviously, then it becomes about how can we soften the blow, I suppose. So then, I would always say, take about 20 minutes. However, I'll go as fast as I can. We'll speed through it together. And if you need to leave, that's all right. That's no problem at all. We can finish it off another time. Making people feel kind of at ease with the idea of being able to leave, conversely, or counterintuitively, makes them more likely to actually stick around. But yes, we don't need to mention it if they don't ask. That's something that I certainly did when I started. I would just offer it apropos of nothing, and then people would be like, don't know. Yeah, it's if they ask, we need to tell them. If they don't ask, we don't have to. You can, of course, but I think it's something that's usually I would just keep that to yourself, and then if they ask, yeah, give them a heads up about how long we would expect, but reassure them, I'll go as quick as I can. If it's a small business as well, use that as another bargaining chip, because we know small businesses, it doesn't take as long. So you can let them know that, it'll take about 20 minutes. However, as I can see, you are a small business, I imagine it will be a good deal shorter. We can't give them any alternative times. So if we notice a small business, we can't say, oh, because you're a small business, it will only take 10 minutes. We can't do that. But we can say, yeah, so we estimate about 20 minutes. However, I can see you're a small business, so I would estimate probably a good deal shorter than that. And then if they ask, well, how long do you think it'll take? I can't really give you a rough estimate, but I'll go as fast as I can. We'll get through it. Should we make a start, see how we go?
Thank you.
All good. Hamza, you had another question.
Yeah, I believe it's the last question of the survey about the number of staff. I was just a bit confused about that question.
Yeah, let me grab it up. So let me share my screen again. Excuse me. So, which question was it you said, sorry?
I believe it's towards the end when you have to type in the numbers of the staff.
Do you mean the staff
categories.
categories?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's sort of towards the middle, really, ish.
So. So this is where we start getting into the specific occupation. So we ask which types of occupations do you have? So let's just add in an extra one here. There we go. Cool. So yes, this is where we asked them to categorize all of the staff. So what was it about this one that you were finding difficult?
I think it's when you get some of the numbers wrong, or if they tell you the wrong numbers, then it comes up with an error message. After this question, if
Yeah,
comes up with some sort of error message, I believe.
that sounds about right. So yeah, let's just put in 400 here and that'll throw up an error. So yeah, some of the numbers entered on this page equal 455, but 75 remaining staff need to be allocated. So if that happens, just explain to them politely, yeah, I think we've got some of the numbers wrong because that adds up to whatever it says on screen. Let me just go back and amend that. So then just run through again. So the process plant and machine operatives, you said that was whatever it was, 40. The skilled trade occupations, you said that was 55. If it's still mistotaling, then I would say just go back and change the check the total staff. So click back until you get to, for this section, we'd like to categorize the 100 staff that you have at this site into a number of different job roles. So is that number correct, 100 people? Now, if they say no, then we need to go back to the first bit where we actually check how many staff there is. So that would be this question approximately: how many people work in your organization across the UK as a whole? So there's a little drop down here. You can use that and then click go to, and that will take you back to where you are. Quickest way to then get back to where you need to be is just hold the enter key, and that will just scroll through until you get to an error, which would be where we had made that error, at which point it'll stop. So then you can get through nice and quick. Sorry, bear with me 1 second.
I do find, guys,
Sorry
that
about
if
that.
you're able to make a note on a piece of paper at the start when they tell you how many staff they have at the beginning section, then you can just be checking as they go, because they're invariably going to be making errors. And then by the time they've made an error, it's too late to kind of, correct it. But if I have it on a piece of paper, then I know, oh, this person's just like going wrong quite badly.
Yeah.
Matt, do you find the employers are making mistakes with that?
It does come up from time to time. It's not all the time, but yeah, people will, especially if they don't have the crib sheet handy, they will, just because they have to keep track of numbers in their head. It can get a bit complicated, but it won't happen all the time, just every now and again. And it then throws up a big red warning sign on screen, and that can be a bit panic inducing. But yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is just keep people up to date with what's happening. Oh, sorry about that. I just got a warning that we've not done the numbers correctly. So bear with me a second. I'll just go back and check. Sorry, Ali, you had a question, then we'll wrap up after that.
Oh, so yes, that's what I was asking. What Matt said. There was something I wanted to ask you afterwards, very quickly. There's some issue I've got. So yeah.
Yep, all good. Hamza, sorry, you had a question.
Sorry, if the number is incorrect, how do you go back to the start? Is it SV at the bottom?
No, SV only shows up on the test jobs. Ignore that. It'll be S3, S4 is where you'd go back to, and then you can just hit next until you get into the next bit. Let me get the exact one so that we're getting that right. Let me share again. Where are we? There we go. Cool. So yeah, we go to, I think it was probably yesterday. No. Cool. So that would be SA5. And then that would go to the original number of people that work in the organization. And again, to get back to where you were, you just hold down the return key or enter key, and that will just speed back through until it hits an error, which will inevitably happen. There you go. And then it will get you back to this page. So yeah. Cool. Ali, yes, you had another question. Sorry.
I was going to talk to you about it afterwards, actually.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's all good. Nice one. Okay, cool. Guys, we will wrap it up there. Thank you all for attending. We will invariably be doing more of these as we go. Let me just stop the recording.